And you never miss a moment. See it all through. What we do? Focus on the Olympics. Yeah. We are here for you. Imperial, optical, crystal, clear view. Focus on winning. Of course. Focus on you. KFC this summer, we a bucket together. Well, I vibe with your crew, yeah, we a stay true, the taste is so good. KFC, bucket on the ends with the real ones. My island, we a world champion with my KFC. I'm gonna be me, jam rock, celebrate with we. KFC, we a bucket together.
When we bucket together, we are as we really are. Enjoy a family 12, party 15, or party 21 bucket. KFC, proud sponsor of Jamaica 60.
It's 4 minutes after 2 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Cliff Hughes.
And I'm George Davis.
Well, good afternoon, George. Good afternoon, listeners. And we're streaming live on our YouTube channel for the Cartel verdict. Yes? And we are going to be learning whether he will be retried for the 2011 murder of Clive Lizard Williams or walk from the Court of Appeal in downtown Kingston this afternoon a free man. Cartel, whose given name is Adija Palmer, along with Sean Storm Campbell, Kahira Jones, and Andre St. John, had their convictions overturned in March this year when the UK-based Privy Council ruled that their right to a fair trial was breached by several jury-related issues. We're going to go straight to the feed from the Court of Appeal.
The appellants appealed their convictions to the Court of Appeal and then to His Majesty in Council. On 14th March 2024, 10 years and 1 day after they were convicted in the Supreme Court, the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council recommended that the appellant's convictions be quashed. The Privy Council remitted to this court for determination the question of whether the appellants should be ordered to stand a new trial. Over 6 days, the court comprising Judges of Appeal MacDonald Bishop, P. Williams, and D. Fraser heard arguments by counsel for the appellants on the Crown on that question. The court has considered counsel's written and oral arguments, as well as the authorities and evidence filed by both sides, and has arrived at a unanimous decision. For a fulsome appreciation of the question remitted to this court for determination and the court's resolution of the issues and sub-issues raised by the parties relative to that question, an abbreviated summary of the background is provided. The allegations in the court below were that the deceased and Lamar Chow, the prosecution's sole eyewitness, had been given 2 unlicensed firearms belonging to Palmer for safekeeping. The appellant Palmer gave Lamar Chow and the deceased a deadline of 8 o'clock p.m. on 14th August 2011 to return them, with which they failed to comply. As a consequence, Lamar Chow and the deceased were summoned by the appellant Campbell to the appellant Palmer's house at Swallowfield Avenue, Havendale, which we call the Swallowfield premises. They went there by taxi on 16th August 2011, accompanied by Campbell, and on arrival were met by the appellants Palmer, Jones, and St. John. The appellant Palmer asked what plans Lamar Chow and the deceased had for replacing the firearms, to which the deceased replied that he would replace them. They were then both attacked, after which Chow saw the deceased lying motionless on the ground, with the appellant Jones bending over him. Lamar Chow escaped, but the deceased was never seen again, and calls to his mobile phone went unanswered. A team of police officers went to the Swallowfield premises to investigate the alleged homicide. They noticed that the house smelled of disinfectant. When the police returned to the premises on a subsequent visit, they found that the entire interior of the house had been destroyed by a fire. On a further police visit, it was discovered that the rear of the house had been demolished. The police dug at the premises but did not find anything of significance to their investigations. The appellants were taken into custody on 30th September 2011 and subsequently charged for the deceased's murder. They have been detained ever since. The appellants were tried in the Home Circuit Court before Justice Campbell, the trial judge, sitting with a jury. The trial lasted 64 days. During the course of the trial, there were 3 incidents involving the jurors. The first and second incidents are not relevant to these proceedings and will therefore not be discussed. It suffices to state that after the second incident, the jury panel was reduced to 11 members. The third jury incident came to light on 13 March 2014, the last day of the trial judge's summing up of the case to the jury. Following the report of possible jury misconduct, the trial judge convened a hearing in chambers and informed counsel on both sides that he had been made aware that a juror, who we call Juror X, attempted to bribe another member of the jury with an offer of $500,000 to decide the case in a particular way. The trial judge and counsel on both sides questioned the forewoman of the jury in chambers. The forewoman informed them that Juror X had spoken to all the jurors and encouraged them to free the appellants without regard to the evidence. There was no evidence to connect any of the appellants with the activities of Juror X. Faced with the possibility of having to abort the trial judge heard submissions from the Director of Public Prosecutions, the DPP, and Defense Counsel. Despite Defense Counsel's resistance, the trial judge decided to continue with the summing up and handed the case over to the jury that evening. The jury deliberated for over 3 hours and by a majority of 10-1, convicted the appellants of the deceased's murder on the same day. The appellants were each sentenced by the trial judge to imprisonment for life at hard labor, with the stipulation that the appellants Campbell and Jones should serve a minimum of 25 years in prison before becoming eligible for parole, and the appellants Palmer and St. John should serve a minimum of 35 and 30 years, respectively. The appellants were unsuccessful in their appeal to this court and appealed to the Privy Council. The Privy Council allowed the appellants' appeal and quashed their convictions on the basis that the trial judge's treatment of the third incident of jury misconduct was a material irregularity in the course of the trial, giving rise to a miscarriage of justice. In the Privy Council's view, the trial judge should have done more to investigate the third incident of jury misconduct and not rely solely on the forewoman's account. Furthermore, allowing Juror X to continue to serve on the jury was fatal to the safety of the convictions and was an infringement of the appellant's fundamental right to a fair hearing by an independent and impartial court under Section 16 of the Constitution of Jamaica. Lastly, the fact that the prosecution was prepared to waive the irregularities in the trial did not absolve the trial judge of his responsibility to ensure a fair trial. In all the circumstances, the trial judge ought to have discharged the jury and ended the trial in order to protect the integrity of the system of trial by jury. Against this background, the court has to determine whether the interests of justice require that the appellants be ordered to face a new trial or whether judgments and verdicts of acquittal should be entered. The court starts with the Constitution, which provides that upon conviction, a person should not be tried for a second time unless a court of superior jurisdiction, which is the appellate court, orders that there be a retrial. The Constitution did not set out the circumstances in which the court should order a retrial. It is to case law that the court looks to determine what are the principles applicable to the question of whether there should be a retrial. The court looked at all the applicable legal principles governing the question of a new trial, which was set out most authoritatively by the Privy Council in the case of Reed against the Queen. We will not state the citation at this time, but that is in writing. The court also looks at other principles emanating from subsequent cases since Reed, and we have an amalgamated list of those factors. There are 12 factors that the court has considered. The seriousness and prevalence of the offense, that's one. 2, the strength of the prosecution's case. 3, the availability of the prosecution's witnesses and exhibits. 4, the availability of the defense witnesses. 5, delay and whether a retrial can be facilitated within a reasonable time. 6, the time, financial costs, expense, and impact on the court's resources of a new trial if one is ordered. 7, the ordeal to be faced by the appellants if a new trial is ordered. 8, the impact of prejudicial publicity on the fairness of a new trial if ordered. 9, whether the new trial would give the prosecution an unfair advantage. 10, changes in the Jury Act. 11, potential legislative changes in the sentence for murder. 12, the possibility of prejudice arising from the mandatory minimum sentence and minimum term before eligibility for parole. We have considered all the factors governing the court's determination of whether a new trial should be ordered, and have given due regard to all the material, submissions, and evidence presented by the appellants and the Crown. We commence by stating that the egregious nature and seriousness of the offense in this case is beyond argument. So too is the prevalence of the offense of murder in Jamaica. We make bold to say that the features of this case bear every hallmark of a deliberate attack on and barefaced defiance of law and order, involving allegations of transactions relating to illegal firearms, a killing in respect of which the body of the deceased has not been recovered, or should we say an alleged killing in which the body of the deceased has not been recovered, and interference with a crime scene while it was under the control of the police. The court is therefore satisfied that the nature, seriousness, and prevalence of the alleged offense in this case are powerful factors that weigh in favor of a retrial. The court, however, finds that there are several equally powerful factors which, when combined, militate against ordering a new trial. In summary, these factors are the insufficient and inadequate account by the prosecution for the availability of its witnesses and trial exhibits. Witnesses and trial exhibits relied upon by the appellants, which tended to support their defense at their first trial, are now unavailable or cannot be accounted for. 3, the appellant's trial in the Supreme Court was complex, lasting 64 days, and utilized a significant share of the court and the appellant's resources. Therefore, the time, financial costs, expense, and impact on the court's resources, as well as other cases in the queue awaiting trial, we find that this is significant and it militates against a new trial. 4, the psychological, financial, and medical effect that a new trial would likely have on the appellants who have already spent 13 years in custody, which is demonstrated by medical and other affidavit evidence. We look at the medical problems relating to the appellant Palmer, which came through medical reports that stand unchallenged by the Crown and therefore speak to declining health in the penal institution. The court looks at the lapse of time between the commission of the alleged offense and the likely time in which a new trial would take place, which would, in our estimation, be at least 15 years. We find that to be inordinate. 6, the unjustifiable interference with the appellant's constitutional rights to a fair hearing within a reasonable time under Section 16 of the Constitution of Jamaica, and the potential for that breach or interference, we should say continuing, if a new trial is ordered. We look at the potential prejudice to at least 2 of the appellants who, if convicted after a new trial, would be required to serve a longer term of imprisonment before eligibility for parole than that which was originally imposed upon them after their first trial, due to the operation of the statutory mandatory minimum for the offense of murder. The court looks at other factors which it did not see swinging the pendulum either way, and our judgment will explain it all. We find that the submissions regarding pretrial publicity did not assist the appellants. We find that pretrial publicity is such that you would have to prove that it is impossible to obtain a fair trial, and that question is one for the trial court. What the court did find coming out of the issue of pretrial publicity is, if the mechanisms have to be employed as the Crown had argued, that would add to the delay of the proceedings. As we have said, we have looked at all the other factors, but we find by now, having weighed everything in the balance, that the countervailing, the weight is against a new trial. Our judgment will explain everything in depth, but as we say, this is for the decision, for you to understand what the court has done. Having regard to all the considerations the court has taken into account, we conclude that the interests of justice do not require a new trial to be ordered for the appellants, and we therefore make the following order. Judgments and verdicts of acquittal are entered in relation to the appellants. We must, on the record, thank our judicial clerks, Mr. Jordan Jarrett, Mrs. Yumika Harris Mackenzie, and Mrs. Nicole McLennan.
There you have it. Vybz Kartel, Kahira Jones, Andre St. John, and Sean Storm Campbell are freed. They will walk from the Court of Appeal in moments. George Davis, expected, not surprised.
Yeah, as I said this morning in my commentary, it would shock me, like nothing has shocked me to this point in my life, if the ruling, the decision, was anything other. Just to say, Cliff, that today marks 4,688 days since Vybz Kartel has been behind bars. He was arrested on September 30, 2011. And since that time, he's been behind bars. Today ends that sojourn as a guest of the state.
He will be heading home this afternoon to his family and friends, and this is a massive, massive turn after a decade and a half. Vybz Kartel and his 3 co-accused will not have to face a retrial. The full Court of Appeal, by a unanimous decision, all judges agreeing that they should be freed. The judges made a point. The arguments, the factors against the retrial outweighed those for another trial.
And significantly, many people felt coming out of the hearing that the issue of pre-trial publicity would nudge the judge's decision in a certain way. That would weigh heavily in the judge's decision to ultimately free Cartel and his co-accused. Justice saying no, that had no bearing on the decision because that argument was not proved, and that argument can only properly be proved in front of a trial, which they will now not have to contend with.
Yeah. And for those of you who are just joining us at 24 minutes after 2, it took approximately 21 minutes for the full Court of Appeal, headed by Justice Donald Bishop, to come to a unanimous verdict. That verdict is Cartel and his 3 co-accused are free men this afternoon. They will not have to face the trauma of a retrial. They have walked. They're about to walk. Today's outcome, of course, against Cartel has been 14 years in the making. Yes? Let's take you back through those 14 years, as reported by Mahiri Stewart.
Vybz Kartel, whose given name is Adija Palmer, was charged in October 2011 for the murder of Clive Williams, otherwise called Lizard. He was charged jointly with Kahira Jones, also called Ray Jones, Andre St. John, and fellow dancehall artist Sean Storm, whose given name is Sean Campbell. The quartet went on trial on November 18, 2013 in the Home Circuit Court. The 64-day trial garnered local and international attention. The downfall of the entertainer and his co-accused was linked to multiple voice notes implicating them in Lizard's murder. Nationwide's Abka Fitz-Henley takes us back to the chilling recordings.
Head of the police flying squad, Senior Superintendent Cornwall Biggerford, told the court that on September 30, 2011, he led an operation to the Altamont Court Hotel in New Kingston, where Adija Azim Palmer, better known as Vybz Kartel, was taken into custody. The colorful policeman said he seized the BlackBerry Touch mobile phone from the room occupied by the entertainer. Investigators from the police cybercrimes unit gave evidence that 24 voice notes were taken from the phone. 11 have been obtained by Nationwide News. This is voice note number 1, said to be an angry Cartel complaining about his missing guns.
Hombre, they don't know what's up, Blizzard, and I will call my phone today and tell me, say, them can't find the 2 new shoes them when me give them, dog. So them lock them in our house. Side of all feet where I build up, dog, in a all house they lock 2 shoes and can't find no shoes, Virgin. And I come tell my friend, off me is dog. I just tell them, say, make sure I get my shoes by 8 o'clock in a bad man.
The main prosecution witness, Lamar Chow, also called We, was a member of Cartel's Portmore Empire under the so-called Gaza fraternity. In between long pauses, the trembling witness said he hid what was referred to as shoes, but which were in fact guns for the boss of the Portmore Empire. Chow told the court that the voice lamenting that Lizard and We lost guns was Cartel. He said the person speaking in voice note number 2 is an ominous Vybz Cartel.
Same thing as the rest of man, the boy, him take the thing them, dog, but the boy move up the dog. Dash me, I make the man them dash away now, hombre. Boy, them I tell me, say, they can't find 2 of my shoes in the dog. I kill one of them, you know, I give them till 8 o'clock to get my shoes. As a dead man, that, you know.
Voice note number 3 warns of dire consequences. Cartel, said to be speaking to a man called Problem Child.
I hear you get now, I think, I tell my dog, say, what do you mean, I hear reason about the setting of thing. But as I tell you, hombre, the man where them give the shoes to that, dog, if 8 o'clock come and I get my shoes, are the same thing, dog. So, if them want them friends to live, them better get my shoes. Yeah, more time I level of follow up certain science thing in the dog. When you know, say a girl tell me say she call a woman, and the woman can tell her instantly say, are the boy we go country ready here, move the shoes for sell them, move the shoes them for sell them in a dog. And when say me a match back, I say where the here when me go country, it's a portion of man. It's a portion of man forward in a dog. So me even know which man bedchin. I mean, I tell the dog, yo.
In voice note number 4, Cartel is said to be responding to a suggestion that someone should lose their life over his missing guns.
A real talk, you talk, no problem. Me a page back my dog and make him page him because him a govern the program in a dog. So me a call him right now and make you know what I go on, hombre. Real thing, bad man. That man a real thing, dog. Big woman thing. Yeah, I hear about it, man.
Voice note number 5. More talk of murder over shoes or guns that went missing while in the custody of Clive Lizard Williams.
No, if you say nothing bad, man, I done a pre that already. But that's why them go back from my shoes. That's me can send them down from the Gaza, dog. If them want, them gonna make some one pop and make a year so them have one pop.
Almost 3 years after his arrest, on March 13, 2014, downtown Kingston was swarming with die-hard Cartel fans anxiously awaiting the verdict. They were left disappointed, as each member of the quartet was found guilty by an 11-member jury and sentenced to life in prison. On April 3, 2020, exactly 6 years to the day that the life sentences were handed down, Cartel lost his appeal against the conviction. But 5 months later, on September 25, 2020, Cartel and his co-accused were granted conditional leave to go to the UK-based Privy Council to challenge the conviction. Jamaica's final appellate court heard his case on February 14 and 15, 2024. A month later, on March 14, the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council quashed the conviction on the grounds of juror misconduct. It also ruled that the case should be remitted to the Court of Appeal of Jamaica to decide whether to order a retrial of the appellants for the murder of the deceased. The Court of Appeal heard submissions on the matter on June 10. Over 5 days in June, a 3-judge panel of the Court of Appeal heard arguments for and against the prospect of a retrial for Cartel and his co-accused. Those hearings focused on the cost of a possible retrial, the availability of witnesses, and the publicity the original trial had garnered. Cartel's health also featured prominently in those hearings. The 3-judge panel would have taken all these factors and more into consideration in reaching their decision.
control me destiny.
Well, that's what we have, folks. A timeline of the Vybz Kartel issue. Do we have Robbie and Williams, who's over there in Waterford, St. Catherine, the place popularized by Vybz Kartel, christened as Gaza? Robian?
Greetings, George. Greetings.
Greetings.
Tell us what's happening where you are.
All right, it's jubilation here in Waterford, St. Catherine, the place known as Gaza City, the hometown of Vybz Kartel, and I'm here with someone who is overblown and excited, so I'm going to let you hear from him. Today, Vybz Kartel is working for free. What say you on this?
Well, overwhelming again, you know. I know from ever since, from the beginning, I know it's been, I have been here straight through, and I have been here for Vybz Kartel and his straight here and co-accused. And Vybz Kartel is a mentor to us in this community, right? And Vybz Kartel, I've been to prison one time with Vybz Kartel, and been there with Vybz Kartel. It's like he's out here with me, and I am glad that he's out here with me now. Glad him out here with me now, because man for free. Everybody deserves a second chance. And this is not really a second chance, because he's there for 13 years. And I am glad that he's free today at this moment. Today is Emancipation Day for us
In Waterford.
in Waterford. And tomorrow is Independence Day for us in Waterford. So we get emancipation,
And independence in one.
behind one another, back of one another. Our overwhelming again. Vybz Kartel is free.
All right.
Overwhelming.
All right, thank you so much. There you have it from a resident in Gaza City. As I said before, Cliff George, jubilation, excitement. We saw people running up and down just now. We also saw people knocking pot covers here in Gaza City. People are overwhelmed. There are free world boss signs posted in the community, and it's just pure, overwhelmed joy and unspeakable joy, they say, here in Waterford.
Would you describe the scenes, Robian, to say people have filled the streets as they celebrate, or people are a little bit more muted than that? Describe that for us.
They're more reserved, George. They're inside their houses. There are few on the street. There are a few on the road at this point in time, but they are reserved. They're in their homes, but they're celebrating inside their homes. As I said before, we saw several people running in the streets, but more people are in their homes celebrating.
Any police presence or the security forces out?
I'm looking at this point at a service vehicle. Only one I've seen so far. With two police officers.
Any entertainers that you recognize among the people gathered in Waterford?
No entertainers. However, there are a few representing producers here. I'm not sure of their names, but they spoke with us earlier and they say it's one Gaza nation.
Hear you on that. Thank you, Robian. Vybz Kartel and his co-accused, they have been freed by the Court of Appeal. Thank you, Robian.
And we're going to go to our reporter in downtown Kingston at the Court of Appeal, Ricardo Brooks. Good afternoon, Ricardo.
Good afternoon, Cliff. Good afternoon, George. That's right. I'm standing in front of the Court of Appeal, where there are plenty smiles from the legal team of Adidja Palmer and, well, can't say co-accused anymore. The men are freed. President of the Court of Appeal handing down that ruling a short while ago, indicating that on the balance of all the factors that the court had to consider to order a retrial would be an injustice to the men.
Give me, put on your best descriptive hat now, Ricardo. You are more than capable.
Hello?
Ricardo, are you hearing us? Hello? Ricardo?
Hello?
Ricardo, are you hearing us? Hello?
No, he's not.
Please reconnect him because, we're just about to get into it.
We'd like him to take us into the court to tell us what it was like when it became apparent that the Court of Appeal.
I want it before that. I want from the moment Justice McDonald Bishop walked in and down to that point. So that's what we want from him. Cliff, Vybz Kartel is 48. He was 48 on January 7, born in 1976. So he's been behind bars since he was 35 years old, not known at that time to have any major ailments, but since his incarceration, he's been affected by Graves' disease and other things, and he looks a lot different from the slim guy with he had on the dreads, but it was extensions that he was wearing at the time when he was handcuffed in that white t-shirt. That image will live forever in my mind, handcuffed with his hands in front of him.
Let's go back
and
to
pensively
Ricardo
looking.
now.
Ricardo, are you there?
Ricardo?
Are you hearing us, Ricardo?
Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir, we're hearing you.
Yes.
You're hearing us?
Yes, yes.
I was asking
Hello.
you, Ricardo, describe the events for us from the moment the judges walked into the courtroom to the point where she made that definitive announcement about the decision.
All right, so they entered the courtroom at exactly 2 o'clock. The Court of Appeal is known for getting underway promptly. The tension in the room was so heavy you could cut it with a knife. There was dead silence, everybody paying attention to the bench with rapt attention. And I don't know if you can hear from where I'm standing, but crowds are now beginning to gather in the precincts of the Supreme Court. We previously did not have crowds here, but now they are beginning to gather. The security forces are now taking up their position. I'm going to try to move closer to them, but they're chanting something. But back to inside the courtroom, the tension was there. Justice MacDonald Bishop, the president of the Court of Appeal, as you would have heard, going through in a methodical way her summary of the matters and indicating that on the balance, the 3 judges believed unanimously that to order a retrial would have been an injustice to the men.
Which point elicited a gasp from the crowd, if any, inside the courtroom, Ricardo?
Well, I tell you something. It was almost as if people were afraid to breathe, George, because the way Justice MacDonald Bishop began when she outlined the severity of the offense of murder and the prevalence in the Jamaican society, a few of the reporters exchanged glances, wondering as to whether it was indicative or instructive that she had started at that point. But quickly we were disabused of that notion as she went through. But as soon as she said, the men are freed, the members of the prosecution team bowed their heads, and you could see the obvious satisfaction on the faces of the legal team.
Tell us who those were. Who was in there for the prosecution, who for Cartel's defense?
The acting director of public prosecutions, Claudette Thompson, appeared, as well as an assistant DPP, Yannick Forbes, and a Crown Counsel, Isaac Buchanan, John Clark, and her first name escapes me now, but her last name is Labeach, Alexandra Labeach. They appeared on behalf of Cartel.
Was there backslapping, fist bumping among the defense team, or were they more measured than that?
No, absolutely. As soon as the judges left the courtroom, congratulations all around. Members of court staff congratulating them. They were congratulating each other. And you'll see from videos I've submitted that they say that this has been a long journey for them, and they're really just expressing that they're thankful now that it has come to an end. I'm going to try to make my way also to Tower Street, because we understand that based on the definitive statement of the President of the Court of Appeal, the men could walk out of that facility this afternoon.
That's what I was going to ask you about, the administrative procedure from here to allow them to walk out of the facility they're being held at.
Yes, so the legal team, they are of the opinion that there is now no lawful basis for the continued detention of the men, because that last statement the president made was definitive. The men are freed. So we're going to try to make our way to that facility to see what happens now. And the legal team of Cartel, they seem to be going up King Street to meet the throngs of supporters who are chanting. And of course, he is about to get a hero's welcome, as you can imagine. I don't know if you're hearing.
We're hearing.
So Isaac Buchanan is walking to meet the crowd, and they are greeting him as a hero, because they're coming down King Street now towards the security barrier. They have now breached the security barrier. The police are trying to restrain them, but they are greeting Isaac Buchanan as a hero, and you can hear them chanting, "Freedom, freedom, freedom."
Clutch your phone tight, Ricardo. All right, so
I have it close to my ear.
Yes, so have they hoisted him in the air just yet, Isaac Buchanan?
No, he's telling them to go back and to maintain order. The security force is insisting that he not allow them to come down King Street and through the security barrier.
Prior to this, how well behaved, if at all, was the crowd and their interaction with the security forces down there?
Well, I tell you something, when we arrived, there was nobody here, so we were actually wondering what was going to happen. But as soon as the news, I imagine, began to spread, the crowds began to gather. You can see them. They've taken up position all across the civil division of the Supreme Court, for those who know the lay of the land. They've also taken up position at Kemlani March across the road, and of course at the Court of Appeal, right at the security barrier.
Wow. And it's a case, Ricardo, I'm sure you would say, of reputations enhanced for the men and women or the team that worked for Vybz Kartel and his co-accused today.
As I said, George, a hero's welcome a while ago. As they spotted him, the throngs came running down King Street toward the security barriers, causing the police to be on alert and actually to have their weapons at the ready.
How swiftly did the justices leave the court after that final word from Justice Marva McDonald Bishop?
I'm sorry, repeat that for me?
How swiftly did the justices leave the courtroom after the final word was spoken by Justice Marva McDonald Bishop?
Swiftly. They didn't tarry at all. As soon as she said the men are freed, we were given the all rise and they departed.
Excellent. Well, good work, Ricardo. Stay with it because we want to know what happens from here, when the men will be allowed to go home.
All right, will do.
Ricardo Brooks there, who is working for us at the Supreme Court building where the Court of Appeal is located, saying that Isaac Buchanan and the other attorneys have been given a hero's welcome by the supporters of Vybz Kartel, who have flooded the streets in the vicinity of the Supreme Court building to hail the architects of the release of their entertainer and his co-accused.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's it. Huh? Mahiri Stewart is in Halfway Tree to get some reactions from that location. Mahiri?
Right. Afternoon, Jamaica. We're out here in Halfway Tree at the moment, getting some first-hand reactions to the ruling. I can tell you this much. At the point of us hearing the ruling, there was an uproar while we're trying to find a good place to film. We did get a couple interviews with some Vybz Kartel fans who were very excited at the ruling. But another thing we realized that a lot of people, especially in the lead up to the ruling, weren't really willing to speak on the record. They were kind of tight-lipped about it. Some didn't know enough to speak. Some knew just as much as we did, but were afraid to voice their opinion. But it's safe to say, a good amount of people right now that aren't even sure. I had somebody that saw me in a nationwide show earlier saying, well, they were asking me whether or not the ruling was actually real. But I had to tell them it is a real ruling. He's been freed. We're getting some reactions now out here in the field.
All right, so are you going to share any of those with us before we go?
Are you going to share any before we go? Well, we plan to, yes, but we have some pre-recorded that we're probably going to air later.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. You can make your way. You can do what you have to do and make your way. That's fine. Thank you very much, Mahira Stewart, who's out there in Halfway Tree, St. Andrew. He says a lot of people going about their business, trying to get from point A to point B, trying to get transportation, not even aware that the ruling was being handed down today.
Exactly. And we have with us Professor Donna Hope of the University of the West Indies, Professor of Cultural Studies. Professor Hope, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Cliff. Good afternoon. Yes.
Give us some assessment what this means in terms of the cultural space in Jamaica.
It means that there's going to be a lot of jubilation in the cultural space. It also means that in the musical space that there will be a lot of songs that are going to be coming out in support of ghetto youth, in support of, men who feel that they have been unjustly incarcerated, because what has happened is that in this instance, the justice system has had to respond to what is a situation that cannot be moved in any other direction.
Professor,
I listened very carefully to Justice Bishop McDonald, and the summation that she made. Once she said the word however, I knew everything else after would lead to an acquittal. So she set it up very carefully to show that the system is aware of the egregious nature of the crime and all the things that are associated with it, and then the however came.
Professor, you know more than most about how Jamaican artists have long raged against Babylon and the Babylon system. What does the verdict say about how the culture views the justice system and how Babylon seeks to oppress those that it doesn't find favor with?
I think honestly that, and notice that there were no supporters at the courthouse this morning, nowhere else, no supporters were on the streets. Everyone was cautiously apprehensive because of a perception that there's a kind of system badness, as they call it, at work against Vybz Kartel and his co-accused, because really, once the Privy Council's ruling came down, it kind of suggested a particular direction that didn't seem to be coming, and so many persons were very cautious. They were very cautious in what their expectations were today, and therefore, to hear the Justice Marvin MacDonald Bishop giving that final summation, many persons are going to be coming out now and saying, yes, the system this is what is going to come from it, confirming in a lot of ways that there is some kind of negative response from the system to ghetto youth, even though, of course, Vybz Kartel, by his own means, has moved himself beyond the poverty that many ghetto youth face. But he's still recognized as an arbiter and a hero for people from the inner cities across Jamaica.
What parallels, if any, can be drawn, Professor, from the fact that Vybz Kartel's road to freedom rolls up at the same point that we're about to celebrate our emancipation, engage in our emancipation celebrations?
I believe that, I'm not sure if this was something that was a plan by the justice system, but I mean, this is August morning in a lot of ways. We are going into the emancipation celebration and then followed by the independence celebration. This is going to be seen as a very prescient moment by many persons, myself included, that this verdict is handed down today when a lot of us are going to be doing August morning celebrations to ring in August 1, which is a celebration of our emancipation from the horrors of slavery, looking forward to August 6, which is a celebration of our independence from the colonial strictures. A lot of parallels are going to be drawn. I can see some of the academic articles that are going to come out about popular culture, the music, Vybz Kartel, and the way that this all came together and converged on August 31, 2024. A lot of meanings and hidden meanings are going to be shown coming out of this. And again, it's an interesting time for Jamaican popular culture and for the music and for dancehall culture and the men and women of dancehall.
Wow. And finally, Professor Hope, the team that represented Vybz Kartel, Isaac Buchanan, has been a magnet for controversy. What do you imagine his role in this turn of events will mean for him and his standing in the eyes of the Jamaican people?
In the eyes of the Jamaican people and the eyes of working class people, inner city people, people who see themselves as dispossessed, Isaac Buchanan will be crowned and lionized as a hero. Already that is being done on King Street, wherever he is right now. He will be crowned and lionized as a hero who stands up for the oppressed, because he has been, since he came to Jamaica and began working in the legal system, in taking up cases for persons who are dispossessed and underrepresented in a lot of ways. And so this will mark for him and his team, but especially for him, because he's the one of the name recognition, it will mark a significant crowning moment, a watershed moment that will uplift and elevate into the eyes and minds of the ordinary Jamaican. Hero, you'll be spoken about in song.
Thank you very much, Professor Donna Hope. An attorney at law, Saeed Bernard, a nationwide co-host, is on the line. Saeed, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, please.
Your reactions to what you heard some minutes ago, not surprising, is it?
No, I'm not. I said it this morning, George. I would not be surprised if that was the ruling. Again, we went over the factors, as relates to how a judge would determine. And again, I heard the good president of the Court of Appeal start speaking about how egregious the crime is. I knew that, however, was coming, because at the end of the day, judges have to show that they have balanced the scales and they have considered a lot of things. And so, once I heard and saw and where the judge was going, I knew that this would have been the end for Vybz Kartel and his friends. They're no longer co-accused.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, a big win for Isaac Buchanan and the members of the defense team.
Absolutely. It's a big win, actually, for justice. It's a big win for fair trial. And this, I think, reinforces the right that every single Jamaican citizen has before an impartial tribunal. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of persons who are in prison who, when you look on their case, you wonder how they were convicted. And so this certainly should lead to some policy review, policy reform, and certainly, as has already been agreed, review and amendment of the Jury Act. Because the part of the constraint that the judge, as he then had, was that if he had struck that juror, he'd have to start over the trial. And so there should be lessons from this that all parties must learn. But the winner in this, Cliff and George, is justice, is the fact that every single Jamaican understands that the pendulum swings. Justice is blind. It must be fair and impartial.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Saeed Bernard, there for your reaction. We're going to have much more on this.
Yeah, at the
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, and of course in the program at 5:30. Just one more thing before we go. It's a it's a development that there are so many storylines around this, because it's not an insignificant point, Cliff, that supporters of Vybz Kartel, of course, will be happy. There are many people this afternoon who are unhappy. There are many people who are criticizing the justice system. For those supporters of Cartel, they now think that there is reason to believe in the justice system, even though they'll feel aggrieved that the justice system put him in this place in the first place.
Right.
But there are many who will say, I had faith. I thought that the jurisprudence in Jamaica, the quality of the justice system was such that a man who is sent away, as we look at these live pictures we're looking at from the Supreme Court building in downtown Kingston, Isaac Buchanan, I think a piece of his handkerchief fell. Yeah, he had to retrieve it. He's being mobbed, as Ricardo Brooks told us. But this verdict, this decision rather, has split opinions in this country. We have to make that clear. Opinions are split. But at the end of the day, Cartel and his co-accused, no more, as Saeed said, they're just his friends. They go home. And Isaac Buchanan looks emotional, like he's crying, Cliff, like he's drying tears. I saw him lift the glasses just now, and he's asking his fans, the people, to just remain calm and keep order as everybody wants to touch him to get a piece of the son of Big Youth.
And we're going to get a reaction now from Abka Fitzhenley, the reporter, yes, who covered the trial for us here at Nationwide back in 2014. Abka?
Good afternoon to you, Cliff. Good afternoon to you, George, and to the listeners of Nationwide 90 FM.
Take us back to getting those voice notes and covering the trial now that we are here on this pivotal afternoon when the men are freed.
Well, I recall I initially covered the trial of Cartel, who was accused of murdering Barrington Bossy Burton, that he was acquitted of. And I saw a sense of jubilation from across certain segments of Jamaican society. And it dawned on me that here am I covering a trial of an individual who perhaps, as one of the captains of popular industry, was or is the most popular man in the country based on the sentiments that were generated across various sectors. I'd say covering the trial was a very, very interesting experience, and I make no comment on the outcome today in my capacity as a lawmaker. But I think many of the scribes who covered the trial back in the day, at the time the longest trial in Jamaica's history, over 50 days, I believe, would
64
not
to
be
be precise.
surprised at the outcome based on certain objections which were made in the actual trial by the defense attorneys at the time, led by King's Counsel. Then Queen's Counsel Tom Tavares Simpson, his son Christian Tavares Simpson, I recall Pierre Rogers, Tamika Harris. They were among the legal team, raising objections concerning the treatment of the evidence, whether cell phones were compromised, and whether the publicity would afford Cartel and his former co-accused a fair trial. I think thinking back to the objections which were put on the record, then it cannot be a surprise to any scribe who had covered the trial, the outcome, and what indeed has transpired today. I recall a senior journalist from Linders Road nudged me as Simpson and his team were making comments, making objections, and the then trial judge, Lennox Campbell, batted them away. That is not for here, it's for across the street. And he pointed to the Court of Appeal, which of course is across the street on King Street in downtown Kingston. So essentially I'd say it cannot be a surprise that has transpired today to anyone who covered the trial. It feels like a long, long time ago. Was it what, 2013?
Yep.
2012?
Yep, 2013.
Yes. I recall as well, gentlemen, after the trial, I'd go on a Tuesday, I'd go to observe the affairs in the Parliament as well, and I got a lot of questions from the parliamentarians who were below in the chamber asking what was the outcome of proceedings today in the Cartel trial. Mm-hmm. It was more than a passing interest or just a flippant inquiry. There was genuine interest. And then it dawned on me that it appears I was covering a trial that would go down in Jamaica's history as one that is attracting a vast amount of interest from wide cross-sections of society. Not surprised at the outcome today, based on what I saw and observed the objections raised by the legal team for Cartel and its former court use.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Abka.
So good.
Good. And that's where we're going to...
Yeah, we have to break for 3 o'clock for
yes,
the
and then we will be back...
At 5.
At 5, and of course, at Nationwide at 5 this afternoon, we give you further coverage. But the decision is Vybz Kartel and his 3 co-accused are freed men this afternoon. I'm Cliff Hughes.
Yeah, and I'm as I go as George Davis. Breaking news coming in on the sporting front. Steve McLaren has been appointed head coach of Jamaica's Reggae Boys. The Englishman, Steve McLaren, the head coach of the Reggae Boys, formerly the assistant coach at Manchester United. And of course, he was part of the coaching staff when Manchester United won the treble in 1999, and the ex-England manager as well. So he managed in England, managed the English national team. He's now going to be directing the Reggae Boys.